Welcome to Gaia community. We are, as you know, a pagan Unitarian Universalist congregation meeting here in Kansas City virtually every week at 4 o'clock. And welcome to week 2 of our Patron Selection Festival. This week we will be hearing from the temples for Hestia, the Mighty Dead, Auðumbla, and the idea of taking a year off from having a patron. In other words, no one. I'm not certain whether to call that one a temple. They'll let us know later. I want to remind you to please turn off your audio if you are not speaking, so that we can keep the video as clean as possible for upload later to our YouTube channel. Before we're taken to the Temple of All Powers, where all of these beings dwell, I invite you to take this time to check in with yourself. Begin with a deep breath. Please inhale for a minimum of 4, hold for 4, out for 4. And as you breathe in and out, I want you to consider these questions. How do I feel today? What values matter to me? What am I seeking in matters of spiritual kinship? What needs do I seek to have fulfilled by this community? Which values and works put forward by powers and temples today do I think will best help Gaia community become a place that will serve those needs? As you consider these points, know that your needs are valued, and this selection process has as its goal the meeting of the most spiritual needs of the most members, and will in no way require any member or attendee to adopt a personal patron relationship with any of the powers introduced or selected. As with all of our rites, you are invited to participate at the level you are comfortable with. So keeping your stewardship of self and your belief in the good of others forward in your mind, I want to bring a chalice lighting into our rite before we go any further here. So these words are offered by Dr. Klur Mukim from the Unitarian Union of Northeast India. To the divine sources of creation and all enlightenment, may this chalice be lighted in your wonderful vastnesses to help us stay grounded in your eternal light and righteousness. We gratefully acknowledge everything within and around us that has shaped our individual lives and as a spiritual community. May our souls find purpose, meaning, and peace as we evolve in our thought, work, and journey, here, now, and beyond. Blessed be. So now I invite you to settle into a comfortable position as we move towards the Temple of All Powers. Your eyes might be open or closed, whatever best facilitates the taking of a journey for you. Let your journey begin where you are, in your own space. Today is another day that you will visit the Temple of All Powers. The journey takes place here, in your mind, and heads to a place beyond reality. But all the same, the travel is familiar. You move from where you are currently sitting, finding yourself outside your home or wherever you are. You begin the journey the same way you begin any other journey from this place. Perhaps you've summoned a car, perhaps you've walked to the bus stop, perhaps you are driving, riding in a friend's vehicle. However you travel, the journey is simple. The world around you seems to know of your purpose today, and there are no unpleasant commuters. No grumbling, dissatisfied people at the bus stop. Hardly any restrictions to your movement. It takes very little time to move beyond your immediate neighborhood, the city where you are, and move out into the surrounding countryside. As you leave your city, you find that your intention guides you and the land around you begins to change. The road shifts from pavement to old paving stones. Your conveyance, if any, drops you off at the bottom of a hill. You see that there is a moving walkway of some sort going up the hillside. You have the option to walk up the smooth paving stones. You can travel through the easy hill through the grass. The trip up the hill passes easily. At the top you see a huge round temple. The exact style of it seems to shift as you look at it from different angles, shifting from culture to culture and era to era. As you enter, you see a dizzying array of altars and temple spaces to deities and powers from every time and place. Some of these spaces are made of stone, some are wood, some are metal or brick, and some appears to be the blank darkness of a starless night. Today you've come to hear from 4 temples in particular: Hestia, the mighty dead, Auðumbla, and no one. As you approach, the attendants and workers of the temples make preparation to invoke the presence of their powers and prepare those who hear for sacred work.
And welcome, travelers, to the temple space of Hestia, the firstborn of Kronos and Rhea, and keeper of the hearth of Olympus. Before we enter the sacred space prepared for the goddess, let us take a moment to wash away the dust of travel, the cares of our everyday life. Take the water that you've brought with you, and sprinkle, wash, or cleanse yourself however you need to feel the cares of your mundane self begin to slide away. And with the weight of our miasma washed away, we move in to the temple. And we invite Hestia to join us with words from the 84th Orphic hymn, translated by Thomas Taylor. To Hestia, venerable dame, who dwells amid great fire's eternal flame, in thee the gods have fixed their dwelling place. Strong, stable basis of the mortal race, eternal, much formed, ever florid queen, laughing and blessed, and of lovely mien, accept these rites, accord each just desire, and gentle health and needful good inspire. With sweet wine and fragrant air, we bid you welcome, Hestia. As we proceed, I want to make certain to mention that this small ritual owes a great debt to the freely shared knowledge of Carrie Oxler, who presented a mini ritual and class for the Kansas City Witches, Wiccans, Heathens, and Pagans meetup for their main event at the end of May. And the video of that event will be publicly available in early July if that is something you would like to experience for yourself. So just now, I invited a hearth goddess, and I did that with traditional words, and then I welcomed a goddess often represented as fire with an electric flame. And you might be wondering, why have you used an electric candle mat? And the answer lies in the traditional notions of what constitutes a sacred fire to people in ancient Greece. There were three ways that you might come by fire that is sacred. One is to concentrate the light of Helios with a parabolic mirror. We still do this, especially for big rituals, including the Olympic Games. The other way you might capture a flame that is sacred is by going to the local temple where a hearth to Hestia maintained a flame that never went out. And the third, and perhaps most sacred of fires, is to find a place where lightning has struck. And because lightning was considered to be the manifest power of Zeus in the world, that fire was also sacred. If we consider electricity as humanity's effort to channel and work with the power of the gods in our everyday lives, then by welcoming Hestia with an electric hearth, we have done so in the most sacred means readily available. As the goddess of the hearth, Hestia could be at the center of nearly every aspect of our lives, because welcoming people is the beating heart of what a hearth is for. One of the first things many of us do every day is go to our kitchen and make either a warm beverage or a meal, maybe both. When we're thinking about welcoming someone into our space, if the stove and the cooktop suddenly stop working, our ability to host them is greatly reduced. If our climate control goes out, our ability to host is greatly reduced. If our beverages cannot be chilled or heated, our ability to host is greatly reduced. And in the ancient world, all of these things pivoted around the hearth. The Greeks had a word for a guest-host relationship, xenia, which specifically translates as guest friendship, a sacred bond of reciprocity where the person who is hosting and the person who is being hosted give one another gifts and support, and there was a standard of behavior for both people once a hospitality relationship had been entered. The deities generally said to be responsible for this relationship were Zeus and Athena. But if the work of the hearth, if the work of Hestia is not solid and well done, then Zeus and Athena's role in maintaining a relationship can't happen, because you don't have a place to forge the sacred bond of hospitality. So if the core of something as important as the guest-host relationship relies on Hestia to function, why haven't we heard a whole lot more about her in myth? There's a really good reason for that, and it's that everyone acknowledged Hestia every day. So she didn't need a big public to do. If you had a stove in your kitchen when you got up in the morning, you stoked the fire to make the morning meal, and a shrine that was incorporated into your stovetop would receive the first offerings of the day for Hestia. That shrine might also be where you make your household offerings to all of the theoi, at which point your offerings are burned at that shrine and carried to the rest of the gods by Hestia. Hestia was so involved in everything, both in home offerings and because she received the first libation at public rituals, that needing to write a treatise or tell a story about her importance was by that point nearly as redundant as me saying to you right now, I am speaking in English. As in-person events start to happen again, and our community starts to create a new vision of ourselves as a dual presence, in person and here in virtual space simultaneously, hospitality, that art of welcoming and creating comfort, is the work that Hestia would call us to do. So now I would like you to pay attention to the hospitality items that you have brought with you. And I want you to think about what excites you about these things. Is it that you love them and are excited to share this thing with other people? Perhaps when you thought about extending hospitality, you had a specific individual in mind. And what you've brought might or might not be something you even particularly like very much. You're just excited to have it for the visitor that you have in mind. And as you think about preparing for that visitor, is there anything that would add to their experience or yours? Is there a particular dish you use when you're offering hospitality? Do you set your table differently? Are there special cushions that you bring out? And now I invite you to also consider what makes you feel welcomed. Is it the same as what you would do for other people? Or are there things that you need that the people you welcome to your space cannot have or do not want? And what ways do you have of observing or learning those differences? It's the knowledge of what brings you comfort and the ability to learn how to create comfort for other people and expand your knowledge in new ways and for new people that we as a community will need to succeed in the work of keeping Hestia's hearth open if we select her as a patron. And because you cannot share from an empty water jug, before we extend hospitality and create comfort for others, let's take some time to see to our own needs. So if you have a place that you leave offerings, I invite you to take some of your provided hospitality and set it aside for Hestia now. Or if you would like, you could wait until the moment for consuming what we've brought and share with her then, and even convey offerings to any place that you might leave them after the ritual concludes. How you share this moment with the goddess is up to you, and so long as it is a moment of sharing, I'm not sure that there's a way to do it incorrectly. For her welcome here today, I thank Hestia with words from the 29th Homeric hymn, translated here by Hugh Evelyn White. Hestia, in the high dwellings of all, both deathless gods and men who walk on earth, you have gained an everlasting abode and highest honor. Glorious is your portion and your right, for without you, mortals hold no banquet. Where one does not duly pour sweet wine in offering to Hestia both first and last. And having made an offering to Hestia, I invite you to take your hospitality now and enjoy it as I play some soft music for the occasion. In a longer ritual, this is the moment when I would invite you to share your insights from contemplation and sharing hospitality with yourself and the goddess. But because part of hospitality is sticking to an agreed upon time frame, instead I'm going to invite you to do that in our various places set aside for conversation, our Facebook page, our Discord server. Both of these places are always open, and I would love to see us talking about the ways we have of providing comfort and refreshment alongside our contemplation of the next year's patron or lack thereof, and our upcoming congregational business. So, now that we have taken this time to enjoy some hospitality and provide some for ourselves, it's time for you to visit some other temples. I'm going to pour one last libation to Hestia in thanks for letting us visit this place, and I hope you all continue safely and with a feeling of being well rested on the rest of your travels today.
Thank you very much for the Temple of Hestia. We now turn to travel to a place where the mighty dead exist and would like our consideration.
You turn away from the Temple of Hestia and move towards the space occupied by the mighty dead. Let yourself take a deep breath, settle in, to construct this next piece of our work in the eye of your mind. Where you expect to find an altar in the temple of the mighty dead, you find only a door marked with the sign of a skull. Let that door open. Let it open on a path that somehow reaches simultaneously into the past and into the future. Take hold of your light, your chalice, your fire. Carry that flame with you as you pass through, beyond that door. Not for the first time, and not for the last. The path leads you down a wide hall, dry and dusty, quiet and calm. It seems that as you move, your path takes you downwards into the earth, under the temple itself. The hall winds downward and onward, away from the busy sounds of the worshipers above. And you come to a place where a small stream runs across this hall. You cross it easily, remembering that the dead often dwell across a river or beyond the sea, under the waves or in the watery west. Look around you. See that in the walls of this hallway are innumerable shelves and niches lit by innumerable candles. Look closely. Some show recent attention, gifts of food or flowers, a glass of water, a can of soda, a cup of whiskey or wine. Incense burns on some, smoke drifting high and lazy, reaching towards the heavens. Candlelight glints off of coins on some shelves, the glass frames of photographs on others. And in each niche and on each shelf, you notice there is a name. Some names shine brightly, polished by the adoration of the ages, but some are less clear. Some are covered entirely by dust or time or neglect. And as you look upon these places of honor and memory, you may begin to feel attention on you. that as you consider the dead also consider your actions. Listen. Ahead of you, someone is moving. Keep going. Follow that sound. And after a few eternal moments, you arrive in a central chamber filled with bones and books, treasures and dust. In this chamber, you see a figure, robed and hooded, a keeper of memory, a keeper of the dead. This keeper puts down a small book patterned in black and white and comes forward to greet you. Welcome. Welcome to the halls of the mighty dead. Have you come to seek counsel? Have you come to serve their memory? I see. You yourselves may not yet know. Let us speak of them then, the long sleeping, the ones who went before. They are many. Almost every culture on the earth honors them in some form or another, though that respect is sometimes twined with fear. They are our past. They are our future. They built the world we live in. They are the reason we are here. They want to be remembered. In the words and the works they left behind, they cry out, "We were here. We were here. Do not forget us." They know much. They have faced every human problem. Their solutions worked or did not. They survived, defeated their challenges, or did not. They preserved their knowledge and passed it on, or they did not. Much that is now lost was known in their time, and people of every nation and every culture reach out to them, seeking them in writings and artifacts, seeking them in prayer and magic and meditation. Even your own Unitarian Universalists honor them, crediting among the sources the words and deeds of prophetic people. Will you listen to their words? Will you study their deeds? What problems, what questions do you bring to the mighty dead? When you imagine them, who comes to mind? Heroes of legend? Heroes of culture? Saints, prophets, poets, holy people? World changers? Your own genetic ancestors? All of these and many more. You are who you are because of your own direct ancestors, but also because of those who inspired you, taught you, nurtured you, fired your imagination, called you onward to learn or explore or grow. To work with the mighty dead, you must place yourself and your world in the proper context. To whom do you owe your existence? To whom do you owe your nature? Think back on your own history. Can you name those who have made you what you are? Take a moment. Recite to yourself your own history. Perhaps you will name your own ancestors. Perhaps you will remember those who cared for you, who raised you, even though you did not share close bonds of blood. Perhaps you will remember your ancestors' spirit, those inspirers and teachers, artists. The names are many, and your time here today is short, but take a moment to think upon them. They have made you who you are. And know this too. Our world is the place it is, not only because of those whose names our history books record, but also because of many, many more whose names are less familiar to us. Many of the mighty dead are forgotten as individuals because they were the wrong color or the wrong gender, the wrong status or nationality or creed or kind to suit the prevailing narratives of their time. It is a blessing and a power to learn this history, to remember their names, to tell their stories. To remember the lost is part of working with the mighty dead. Can you commit to this work? Can you commit to helping these names re-enter the memory of the world? It is said that if we see far, it is because we stand on the shoulders of giants. But just as we benefit from the work of those who came before us, just as we can learn from their knowledge and experience, so too do we carry the weight of their errors. The dead were not perfect. They did not even attain the limited kind of perfection we attribute to the gods. They were complex, messy human beings. Even the greatest, the wisest, and the kindest did harm as they walked upon the earth. Many who were idolized for their achievements and innovations were also bigots, oppressors, destroyers. We live in a world shaped by their choices and their work for good and for ill. So even as we honor the mighty dead, we must reckon with them. We cannot ignore their wrongs. We cannot ignore the way that their wrongs live on in us and in the world around us. Can you commit to this work, this reckoning with your own dead? And someday we will enter the halls of the dead for the last time, perhaps never to return to the living lands, perhaps only to return in a form much changed. To work with the mighty dead is to know them as past and future, to think and act with a mind on what we will leave behind. What kind of ancestor will you be? What legacy do you want to leave? What do you want to be remembered for? And what must you do to support those desires? This is the work that the mighty dead offer. Think on these questions as you go into the days ahead. This work is the work of lifetimes, and it will not be completed in a year. But if you choose to take up any part of it, you bless the memory of the mighty dead, you bless the world. Consider your path with care, and should you desire, return here when you have chosen. Take a moment now to think upon the questions, the considerations brought to you by the mighty dead. The work ahead, the gifts they offer. You might also take a moment and ask to be reminded of something that you have forgotten or that the world has. The lost is their province. Let your mind be open to receiving that gifts now or in the days to come. And then, when you are ready, thank the dead, your ancestors, your teachers, those who came before. Take a breath and return your attention to that chalice, that flame, that electric light that guided you here. Take a breath, follow your light, back up the path, across the river, back to the land of the living and the temple above, where you will continue on your journey today.
As we leave the dwelling place of the mighty dead, we turn now to the temple of Auðumbla.
As you turn from a niche of skulls, you see before you nothing, absolutely nothing. For this is where we go to find Auðumbla. This is the beginning of everything. And in the beginning, there was nothing. This was before anything, before all things. However, on the side of this nothing, on either side flanking it, this great void of Ganungagat, there was a realm called Muspelheim that still exists, the land of fire and chaos, and the land of Niflheim, the land of ice and stasis. Sparks in the beginning came from Muspelheim into Ganungagat. And as they sparked chaotically into this gap, they began to warm up the ice blocks of Niflheim, and a river began to flow. And as this uncontrollable chaos came in to meet the water, chaos and stasis met in the void, there was a big bang. And space was created. And with it, the stars and all the elements of creation. The universe remained a place with no time, no life, elements floating free, until after a time that could not be counted, the right elements came together and life did appear floating in the cosmos. A cow who would be named Auðumbla, and a primordial giant who would be named Ymir appeared. Ymir's fate is another story for another time. From Auðumbla's teeth, 4 rivers of milk flowed, and Ymir drank these for sustenance. Auðumbla herself licked salty ice rocks from Niflheim for her sustenance. As she licked an ice block, a hair appeared. She continued to lick, and after a while, a head appeared. She continued to lick further until the first humanoid being, Buri, appeared. Buri was the grandfather of the Norse gods, Odin, Vili, and Ve. Auðumbla's name is often interpreted as rich, hornless cow. However, Auður in Old Norse which does mean riches, also means fate or desert. This has some scholars wondering if her name actually means something like the destroyer of desolation. This is a common theme in Norse mythology and poetry, intentional ambiguity in meaning. It is quite possible the name was formed to mean both. Did the Norse really believe a physical cow was floating around in space before the creation of the world? Does honoring Auðumbla mean that you do? Literalism has commonly been an interpretation of religion leading to wars and misunderstandings. If we choose to honor the metaphorical spirit of the story, we are not making it any less real. Therefore, honoring Auðumbla brings attention not only to nurturing, but also creativity. As cows are often seen in most cultures as nurturing creatures, and many goddesses have taken a form of a cow in other cultures, but also Auðumbla is about creativity. Offerings to her are made with acknowledgement of her powers and with respect, but you do not ask her to help with things. A few years ago, at Pagan Pride Day here in Kansas City, a local Asatru kindred had a booth in which they had constructed junk shrines for various powers. That is, a junk shrine was a shrine made of repurposed items like old toys, trinkets, various pieces of wood and plastic. Their shrines focused on the often overlooked or even disliked Norse powers in lore. I asked if I could make an offering of some yogurt-covered raisins that I was snacking on to Auðumbla's shrine. The chieftain of the kindred was thrilled, I knew her name, and then said to another kindred member, as he was chuckling, "We have another dairy product offering for Auðumbla." We all nodded at this verified personal gnosis of knowing what she prefers. With Auðumbla as patron for Gaia community, she would not be a usually invoked entity to aid in the work we do. Rather, she would be a source of inspiration to do the work we know we should do ourselves. With her as patron, a community shrine should be built by everyone once we are meeting in person again. Every Sunday, offerings should be left in honor of embracing the creativity needed for creating a new ritual.
Thank you to the Temple of Auðumbla. We have one more one more center of the temple to interact with today. And that is interacting with the idea of not having a chosen patron, or rather choosing to have no patron in the coming year.
Friends, fellow Gaians, I come to you today empty-handed, weary from a long road, having spoken to many on my search. From far lands and distant shores, I have talked with many and walked a year with quite a few. From the Nile to the Danube to the Yangtze, to the Thames, from the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and the North Sea, and many places between and beyond, and that have never been. And now, my friends, I come to you today and I ask, what have we learned? I do not seek to cast judgment or set an expectation. This is not a challenge. This is a request for a sabbatical. Many traditions include prayers that start out in effect, to whom it may concern, rather than calling on a specific deity or a spiritual being. Sometimes this is to express thanks or awe when someone is uncertain about who sent a blessing or showed their power. Sometimes this is a petition for assistance or clarification, or just a steady hand for a few minutes from whatever friendly being may want to lend their aid. The ancient Greeks and Romans even built altars at which these prayers could be offered. When the Romans restored an altar that had fallen into such disrepair they could no longer identify the being to whom it had been originally dedicated, or built an altar to honor an unknown deity for a blessing they had received, they would begin the inscription of the new altar with "Se Deus, Se Dea," whether god or goddess. Similarly, ancient Athens had an altar near the harbor dedicated to the gods who are called unknown, where people could make prayers and offerings to these unknown benefactors. We have been at this patron selection business for about 18 years now. That is a long pattern. Sometimes, to truly appreciate the pattern, we must step back and look at it from a distance. We need to see the tapestry from afar, so we know what to do next. When doing exercises for fitness, the rest day can be just as important as the workout. In my job as a power engineer, I always have to leave space in the design for when a new demand shows up, a new circuit to feed the previously unknown, or just not mentioned, need. What needs do we have that we do not know or haven't mentioned? With no one as patron, the team of the day can decide that no power will be called or acknowledged as patron because none is needed. With no one as patron, the team could also look at those powers that have been labeled as no one, or at least not of importance, and look into why that is. With no one as patron, we could simply say, to whom it may concern, and see who shows up if we really are unsure. We could call forth those that have actively called themselves no one, for whatever lessons they may teach us. So I ask you, fellow Gaians, for this year, that we let the team of the day decide who it is that we should call upon as patron for the rite, as the situation calls for. If anything, this past 18 months has shown us that we cannot be sure what will happen next, even with all of our divinations. In light of this unorthodox request, I now take questions from the floor.
Feel free to use the raise your hand feature if you have a question, or you can enter it in the chat. At Devin's request, we will be keeping this part of the video on the recording, but I will continue to spotlight him so that you do not have to worry about being on camera. Susie, go ahead.
First, I'm impressed with the way that you have presented this. You've given some things that I hadn't considered. My concern, though, is that it might be thought of as a year off, which I don't personally find to be helpful as a focus for spiritual scholarship. What do you think about that idea?
I think that is exactly on point. But people like college professors will take a sabbatical, will take a year off or a semester off because they've been very dedicated and focused on one thing. And then they take a year off. They take some time off to go contemplate and gather information elsewhere, and then come back refreshed. So what I'm suggesting is that we take a year off from trying to be dedicatedly focused on one thing, that we try to have, instead of there being a vast is the wrong word, instead of having a overarching theme, that we let the universe tell us what it wants us to do for a year, and only a year. It's a patron sabbatical.
So, you mentioned that that we would have rituals that could be dedicated to any power, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that we're totally allowed to do that. We only dedicate maybe 3 or 4, more like 4 rituals a year to our particular patron that year. And while we do tend to mention the patron in most rituals, we don't have to.
Right.
And so that kind of, I don't know, I've never felt constricted by having a patron in the kind of ritual that I do. Maybe that's not a question, just a comment.
Right. And I admit what I'm suggesting is unorthodox, but I myself tend to be unorthodox. But so yeah, basically I'm saying that it's a year of where you don't have to consider that question. Or you have to consider that question in a different light. You could go, okay, we don't need a patron for this. Or you could go, who would normally be the patron for this? And why? And is there a reason why we're ignoring someone else? Does that answer your question?
Jimmy's nodding yes.
Okay.
Would you say, Devin, that a year with no one is an opportunity to specifically say, who is this no one, or have they purposely hidden their name, and sort of explore the non-being of entities that might be?
That is one option, yes. It's kind of like, in a way, I am suggesting that our patron be protean in a way, that they be able to adapt to whatever form is needed, or that I am also in a way suggesting that we take anonymous as a patron, somebody who has chosen to hide their own identity, whether via writing a book or hacking or whatever spiritual equivalent thereof. This is a suggestion of a patron of chaotic possibility, but chaotic in the mathematical sense, not in the Discordian one.
So the patron usually influences what social justice work is done. This opens the opportunity for much. I mean, it gives us a focus where to put our focus. Having no one, we would not really have a focus.
I would say this gives you the focus of figuring out who has been ignored. I mean, social justice does that a lot, but maybe this is very explicitly who has been intentionally made to be no one, who has been erased.
Okay.
This is a suggestion of a patron of intentionally not pinning it down. That is honestly something I had not considered.
So for the recording, I'm going to say what Katie's written here.
Right.
She says, is this a way to appease folks whereas some people get upset or feel not wanting to come to church if a patron they were pulling for?
Yeah, so I honestly hadn't considered that. This is not a way to be, I guess you could say, politically correct or friendly or whatever, or consolation prize. No, this isn't what I was thinking at all. Other people are welcome to think that. And, if that's what's going to be thought, okay. But that wasn't in my head, at least, at all. Does that answer your question?
Okay, good. Anyone else have a question for the Temple of No One? If not, thank you for the Q&A. Do you have any other final?
I've said my piece.
All right, so we have spoken with our 4 contenders for this week, and next week's ritual will be the final of our series. We will be hearing from the temples of Isis, the Phoenix, Ganesha, and Apollo. And we encourage you to come next week and or view the recordings. They'll be put up on YouTube as soon as possible. After next week, we will explain the selection process and have some time to choose who our ventral patron, if any, will be. So now is the time for announcements. Would anyone like to pull up anything that is going on this week while
We will have the Social Justice Committee meeting on Tuesday, the 8th, at 7 p.m. We also have Joys and Concerns, our weekly social check-in, how's it going time, Thursday, 8 p.m. And as you mentioned, Sunday, our ritual will be the final of these 3 patron selection festival rituals.
So we are wrapping up pledge drive season. So if you have not put your pledge in yet for the coming budget year, I encourage you to go to our website and fill that out. Matt thanks you, and I thank you. Matt as stewardship thanks you, and I as treasurer thank you. We are continuing to do our virtual food drive for harvesters or wherever you're at. I think everyone here today is in Kansas City. And as you know, school is wrapping up, which means that kids who get free and reduced lunches and or breakfasts are not going to have that resource available to them as much anymore. So harvesters could use our help over the summer even more than before. Devin, yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. I know that Shawnee Mission is at least providing food during the summer. I'm not certain they're being exclusive to their district.
Nice. Yeah, I know some of the school districts have summer plans and some don't have the
Right.
capability, but
It's not universal.
yeah, that's a good point. And if you learn more, definitely let us know, because that's something we can pass on. And of course, supporting our community is also important. So if you have a pledge or a donation to make, you can go to our website at support-us and make a contribution there for the ongoing welfare of our community. I appreciate everyone's time and energy today. So I want to thank once again the 4 temples that we heard from today: the Temple of Hestia, the Temple of the Mighty Dead, the Temple of Auðumbla, and the Temple of No One, or the Unnamed, or however you're perceiving that option. And at this point, I invite you all to come off mute, and I'm going to, for the sake of the video, spotlight myself, but I encourage you to join me in our standard closing short form today. And we'll do it call and response just to make even more noise. The circle is open but unbroken.
The circle is
Circle is open but unbroken.
May the peace of the goddesses go in our hearts.
May
May the peace of the
Goddesses
goddesses
go
go
in
in
our
our
Hearts.
And the dance of the god enliven our days.
and the
the
dance
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 of the
of
Gods
gods
enliven
God
our
in our
days.
days.
And may we care for the earth and each other.
And may we
May we
care
care
for
for
the
the
earth
earth and each other.
As our lives depend on it.
Our lives
Because our
Our
lives
lives
depend
depend
on it.
As close to all together as we can.
Mary.
Merry
We
meet,
meet
merry
Merry
part,
and
and
Merry
merry
meet
meet
again.
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 Woo!
Because I'm on some
This
sort of
ritual
audio
took
lag.
exactly 1 stick of incense length.
yeah.
Exactly.
Good job, everyone. Keep it brief.